Good evening. Welcome to the May 21st, 2018 meeting of the Board of Selectmen, soon to be the Select Board of Arlington. We're here in the Selectmen's Chambers. All the way to my right is Selectman John Hurd, and next to me is Selectman Joe Curo. I'm Dan Dunn. To my left is Selectwoman Diane Mahan and Selectman Kevin Greeley. We are joined by Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine and Town Council Doug Heim and Board Administrator Marie Kropelka. I don't have a quote for us this evening, but I will say that when you're arranging the agenda, you often look at it and you say, well, we've got somebody here who's here for like a proclamation, or they're here to make an announcement, or they're a town employee that doesn't usually work nights, and so we want to get them in and out quick so that we can do the rest of the meeting pretty quickly. And I looked at this agenda and I said, well, everybody needs to be first. So I apologize that some of you are going to be probably sitting around a little bit longer than maybe you're used to, but I tried to organize the agenda as much as I could to get those public participation parts up front. That said, our first item tonight is the approval of the sale of $52,000 in sewer bonds to the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, also known as the MWRA. Treasurer Carmen.
Hi, good evening. So this is a follow-up to the borrowing that we did about a month ago. Went through our books and records. We're settling up with the MWRA, and we determined that we had $52,500 of additional borrowing capacity that we could avail ourselves of. So I'm here before you tonight to ask you to approve the sale of those bonds so we can, apply them to repairing, sewer mains and water systems and things like that.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion by Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, 5-0.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. Next up, reimagining our libraries. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Andrea Nicolai, Director of Libraries. Thank you, Chairman. I'm excited to share the progress of the space plan study that began a year ago, and I'm joined tonight by Library Trustees Adam Domolino and Heather Calvin. Before sharing the slides, we're going to give you a quick snapshot of library use and an overview of the space plan rationale and process, and summary of the community program goals that drove the designs. In the past 3 years, our overall program attendance at the libraries has increased by 43%. We actually rank 5th in the entire state for children's program attendance, after Boston, Cambridge, Springfield, and Newton. Teen use of the library has increased super sharply over the last few years, 41% over the past 2 years alone, based on program attendance. Our teen circulation is also 3rd highest in the whole Minuteman Library network. As for Fox Library, Saturday hours added in FY18 contributed to Fox use really increasing. Our circulation has actually doubled in the last 10 years. And with Gibbs set to open in the fall, we're getting ready for a whole slew of new 6th graders and their families using the Fox Library. Community conference and study rooms are also in greater demand than ever. We've actually seen that use increase 80% over the past decade as well. And now with the chairman's permission, Heather is going to come up and talk about the process and rationale.
Please.
Thank you. I am pleased to be with you tonight to talk about one of my favorite subjects, the library. The library's current plan, long-range plan, was adopted in fiscal year 15, and at that time, the library director and board of trustees recognized the need to include in that plan a space planning study. We recognized the incredible usage statistics that Andrea just shared with you and the amount of demand in our community for library services. We understood that the landscape and array of needs facing libraries, including our libraries, had changed significantly over time in terms of services, needs, collections that the library would need to meet. And we recognized that with respect to Robbins, even with building maintenance supported through the capital plan, there were significant issues with code compliance and the general wear and tear that happens when you run a building for 25 years with 1,000 members of the public coming in every day. In regards to Fox, we also knew that we needed to address failing systems and public spaces that had never been fully accessible or up to code. So last fiscal year, carrying through on the commitment we made in that long-range plan, the trustees authorized the use of trust funds that had been set aside to support the space planning study that we've referred to as reimagining our libraries. The trustees and director set out to identify and hire an architect to support that process. We hired Ann Beha Architects, the principal of which, Philip Chen, is a local Arlington resident and avid library user, along with his 2 young children. And a working group guided that process that included library staff, 2 members of the Board of Trustees, a member of the Library Foundation Board, a Friends of Fox member, a Friends of Robbins member, and a representative of the Town Facilities Department. Over the course of the past little more than a year, we've had 2 public meetings, a survey that garnered 500 responses from members of the community, and the working group, through several meetings and meetings with library staff along with the architect, identified the priorities to drive any future changes to the library facilities in Architect Speak the Building program, and selected and worked with the architect on refinement of proposed concepts to best meet those priorities. So with that background, I will give it back to Andrea to share with you the priorities that emerged through the community process and the designs.
So one thing that came up across for both libraries was a need for more public meeting space and more space for children and teens, which really follows the whole enrollment growth in Arlington. And the need for more bathrooms in both libraries. So with respect to Fox, of course, there's accessibility. We need an elevator to the lower level. There was a desire to preserve the Little Fox shop as an important source of revenue for the Fox Library. An interest in shifting the entrance of the library to Mass Ave, the Mass Ave side. There was also a desire for increased seating for adults, because adults use the Fox Library too. At Robbins, there was a desire for cafe-style seating so that people feel comfortable eating and drinking in the library in a specified spot. And there was also a call for optimized service points and more self-checkout options for our patrons. And we knew that however we solved for these goals, we needed a solution that acknowledged and honored the community focus on preserving the collections and adding meeting space. So now I'll turn your attention to the slides. The recommendation for the Fox Library is to demolish the existing facility and build a new 1-story library with the structural potential to build a 2nd story or more if that's ever desired. The building will be fully accessible with elevator access to the lower level. And on the left, you can see that the main entrance of the library joins with the Capitol Square businesses and the streetscape in general. For the lower level, go ahead. We're envisioning a town conference center concept with new public meeting spaces, adding 4 additional meeting spaces that can be used by members of the public and community groups. We're looking at some dedicated library storage space downstairs and some new single-stall bathrooms. Going up to the 1st floor, we're looking at an expanded children's area adjacent to the Little Fox shop, a dedicated teen area, and a laptop bar along the corner overlooking Cleveland Street and Mass Ave, which represents the increased adult seating, which would also be a nice view from there. There's also a strong interest in exploring how we can incorporate public art into the designs. The Fox hard cost estimates in 2019 dollars are $6.3 to $6.9 million. And moving along to Robbins, the recommendation is for a full interior renovation where every floor is touched and brought up to code. We're imagining a 2-story addition on the garden side of the current fiction room to accommodate a new reading room with cafe-style seating and a new dedicated children's storytime room right beneath that on the lower level. We're also recommending ramp access to the community room downstairs to allow for after-hours use of the community room space and the connectivity with the children's garden patio level. Going to the lower level floor plan, there we go. You can see the new storytime space on the upper left corner, connects with the outdoor terrace. You can also see the new single-stall bathrooms and the ramp access to the community room. We're re-envisioning some staff space in the lower right as well. Next slide. On the 1st floor, you can see the teen area has actually moved into the fiction area, which harkens to a previous era of the Robbins Library. The children's room used to occupy the fiction room, so it's kind of a return to youth space. And then the addition off the teen space. Importantly, the teen space would be all closed in this new plan. So they would be comfortable in their space, and adults who want to use the space adjacent would also be comfortable in theirs. Moving to the second floor, we're looking at new single-stall bathrooms, laptop bar seating along the garden side of the floor, and then going to the third floor, we're looking at adding some group study space in the middle of the floor that would be glassed in to allow some natural light through. And going up to the fourth floor, a renovated staff space and 2 single-stall bathrooms. And the conference room would, of course, be maintained. So the hard cost estimates for this design in FY19 dollars is $8.3 to $8.5 million. And with permission of the chair, I'd like to bring Trustee Adam Domolino to speak about funding outlook.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good evening. My name is Adam Domolino. I'm the chair of the Robbins Library Board of Trustees. I'm a resident of Arlington, live at 170 Newport Street, and I'm really excited to be here tonight. I brought my daughter along because this is about the future of Arlington and our children in the libraries. We recognize the town is facing significant financial decisions over the next year. And the Board of Trustees and the Library Administration hopes to join in partnership with you, our town manager, Adam Chapdelaine, Senator Friedman, Rep. Garbely, Rep. Rogers, and others as we explore state funding through the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners and other entities, including potential municipal funding through the town's capital plan, private fundraising through the Arlington Libraries Foundation, the Friends of Robbins Library, and the Friends of Fox Library, as we pursue all potential avenues of revenue for these enhancements to the library. We realize that we have a long road ahead of us, but with partnership with all of you, we think we can accomplish these goals. And so we appreciate that, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last but not least, thank you for your time. I'd like to also extend an invitation to the 2 public meetings that are happening in mid-June, June 14th and June 19th at Robbins and at Fox, respectively, at 7 o'clock. So hope to see you there if you can make it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Yeah. Ms. Hurd. Oh, sorry, I thought, Diane?
First, should I move to receive the report? Do you need anything beyond that?
No.
Okay, move to receive.
Second.
Just one question, especially around the Robbins Library, because I get it a lot, but also for the Fox Library. Will the public egress remain the same at the Fox and the Robbins? You know, where you're putting the teen, where when I grew up and I was a kid, that's where the fiction room was. And a lot of parents have said, that door right there at the Robbins Library, which will be the teen area, you cannot, and I have no feeling either ways, you cannot access it, gain entrance unless you go in the main, which makes sense to me. So, but people have asked me, what will the public egress be at the Fox, at the Robbins? And if the answer is it's going to remain the same, especially with some of the additions, and if it's not.
Yeah, the plan right now is for it to remain the same.
Okay. I assume for security reasons, so.
At Robbins, yes. And at Fox, besides the main entrance shifting to Mass Ave, the proposal is for there to be a service entrance on Cleveland.
I was going to ask, is that delivery area new, or is that where it's always been on the Fox, off of Cleveland?
That is actually close to the main entrance. There's no other entrance for deliveries there.
So that's what I mean, we don't
Right.
have one right now, and you're proposing one. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got my topography correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for,
Joe?
Thank you very much. Thank you for this. I'm really intrigued with all this. Having taken part in some of the initial public forums, I think you really captured a lot of the issues that were raised there really well. I'm really intrigued with this glass addition at the Robbins, and the way it brings the library out into the gardens is quite fascinating to me. Not to mention the light. But my question is, I know that during some of those forums, there have been some discussion about trying to position this so it could be a phased project. And so has there been more discussion and thought about how the phases would potentially roll out? I know a lot of it's contingent on funding, but.
Yeah, actually, we did think a lot about how the project might be phased at Robbins. Of course, the Fox would not be phased, but
Yeah.
it really is dependent on the funding outlook and what might be possible through the foundation fundraising and state grants, of course. So yeah, it's very much to be determined.
Okay,
But we are really interested in looking at phases.
thank you.
How has capital planning seen it yet?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Congratulations on the great work you, your staff, trustees have all done in terms of that, the increase in the use of this. So, assuming the funding came through, you can't really do both at once, can you?
No. That, no.
Right, I mean, you'd
Because
be
I would
happy
wanna
using the
maintain-
Robins while the Fox is being built and vice
Absolutely.
versa?
Absolutely.
Okay. And which is first, or?
Oh, too early to say. That's the multi-million dollar
That might
question.
cause argument somewhere, Andrew, I don't know. But, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very exciting.
We'll probably just flip a coin.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, anybody else? All right, we have a motion to receipt from Diane Mahan, seconded by Kevin Greeley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very much, thank you.
Very exciting.
All right, next up, we have two parts. One is first part is a proclamation, and the second part is an actual policy vote for the board to consider. And I'm going to start with the proclamation because I'm very, no pun intended, proud to read this. All right, Town of Arlington, proclamation. Whereas Pride events are held nationwide throughout June in cities and towns across the country to gather the LGBTQIA+ community for festivals, parades, and other events to celebrate the community's enduring spirit and the progress that has been made in establishing a more inclusive, just, and equal world for the LGBTQIA+ community. And whereas Arlington Town Meeting in 1993 created the Human Rights Commission, declaring that the town values the diversity of our population because the mix of ethnic, religious, and cultural backgrounds, as well as economic and personal circumstances, enriches us, and that Arlington will be known for the warm welcome and respect we extend to all. And whereas Arlington Town Meeting in 2017 created the LGBTQIA+ Rainbow Commission to promote equality-affirming policies regarding the full spectrum of sexual orientation and gender identities, and to bring greater visibility and empowerment to the LGBTQIA+ population through education, advocacy, and collaboration with other town agencies, schools, and community groups. And whereas the town bylaws were amended in recent years to add non-discrimination protections on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and whereas as Pride is not only a time of celebration, but also an important opportunity to reflect on and plan the work still ahead of us, and whereas it is imperative to preserve public accommodation non-discrimination laws that explicitly protect transgender and gender non-conforming people in Massachusetts from discrimination in public spaces like stores, restaurants, hotels, public transportation, parks, museums, and hospitals. And whereas hate incidents, including recent anti-gay graffiti, has been on the rise in Arlington in the past few years. And whereas celebrating Pride Month and displaying Pride flags are outward representations of the town's commitment to full inclusion of the LGBTQI+ community in Arlington civic life, now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Board of Selectmen, soon to be known in gender-neutral terms as the Select Board, reaffirm our support for equal protection for all people regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Be it further resolved that we designate June 2018 as Pride Month in Arlington, and it is signed by each of us.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Who's our chair of the LBG? Can I hand this to you? We got two, right? I know it's a one. You do? All right. So next up is, under the same item, is a request for the support of Freedom of Massachusetts Coalition to uphold Massachusetts non-discrimination laws. Helene and Lisa, come on up and introduce yourself and welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Lisa Krinsky. I live on Lockland Ave, and I'm a member of the Rainbow Commission.
Helene Newberg, on Grandview Road, a member of the Rainbow Commission.
Welcome. Do you want to just pull the mic down so there's a little bit, that way, as we say, the millions at home will be able to hear you. Go for it.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you this evening, and thank you so much for the proclamation. The Rainbow Commission is grateful to this board for recognizing Pride Month in Arlington. Our festivities will be modest this June, but we're hoping that Arlington's Pride celebration will grow each and every year. We want to give a brief introduction to the Rainbow Commission for those watching at home. As you already said, town meeting established the LGBTQIA+ Rainbow Commission in 2017 with the purpose of promoting equality-affirming policies regarding the full spectrum of sexual orientation and gender identities, and bringing greater visibility and empowerment to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and more population through education, advocacy, and collaboration with other town agencies, schools, and community groups. The commission met for the first time this March and has 7 members, 6 appointed by the town manager and subject to the approval of this board, and 1 appointed by the school committee. In addition to the 2 of us, there are Chair Anna Watson and Vice Chair Mel Goldsype and Commissioners Bill Gardner and Brooks Harrelson. We currently have 1 vacancy. In the coming year, the Rainbow Commission will combine results from some surveys in 2015 and 2016 with additional community input to develop a mission statement, a 5-year plan, and some other short-term projects. Using the criteria from the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index as a guide, the Rainbow Commission is already working with the town to implement changes to the policies and procedures that will improve visibility, inclusion, and general quality of life for our LGBTQ community. These steps include our Pride celebration, a booth at Town Day, educational events, and social gatherings. We're also hoping to set up a health screening for Town Day. The main Pride event this year will be a picnic in the garden of the Whitmore Robbins House on Sunday, June 10th from 3 to 5 p.m. Food for the picnic is sponsored by the Council on Aging, thank you, and the rain location is the big room on the 2nd floor of the Senior Center, but we hope it'll be a sunny, shiny day. We'll also be hosting drop-in sessions for the community to meet commission members, learn about our work, and give us their questions and concerns. And we'll also have Pride displays at the Senior Center and on one of the tables in the Robbins Library. We hope everyone will stop by and check them out. Speaking of the library, which has long been home to many efforts and activities for the LGBTQIA community, here are a few Pride events that they have planned. The first will be a teen LGBTQIA+ drop-in screening of Freak Show, a semi-autobiographical teen comedy about an unapologetically gender-bending teen who runs for homecoming queen, and that's on Thursday, June 7th. The Real Queer Intergenerational Movie Series will be screening the film Pariah. That will be on Tuesday, June 12th. The Robbins Library Queer Book Group Social will be discussing Cottonmouth by Kelly J. Ford. That's on Wednesday, June 27th. And local elder Sue Katz presents From Pioneer to Elder, One Arlington Woman's Journey from the Birth of Boston's Gay Liberation to LGBTQ elder activism today, and that's Thursday, June 28th. All of these events will be at the library.
So if you point your browser to tinyurl.com/arl, A-R-L, Town Rainbow, it will direct you to our page on the town website, which will be updated to include links to our Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, which will have details for all our events. You can reach us by email at rainbow@town.arlington.mad.us. If you know of individuals or groups in the area doing similar work, please let us know so we can add them to our resource list. All Rainbow Commission meetings are open to the public. We'll be doing strategic planning in June, but we'd love to see Arlington residents join us at our meeting on July 19th at 6:30 p.m. in the Board of Health Conference Room in the Senior Center at 27 Maple Street. Our meetings are listed on the town calendar online. So here are the 2 asks that we have this evening. I know you're waiting for that. I'm grateful for the town's commitment to equality for LGBTQIA+ people in town, and we think everyone would like to see that sort of pride and support reflected in decorations on Town Hall. What we have in mind is hopefully a painted rainbow crosswalk. I got to bike over one downtown in Boston a few years ago. It was very festive. And we hope to get permission to hang rainbow decorations, not a flag, but sort of a bunting type decoration or a flag decoration on Town Hall alongside a trans flag decoration. The trans flag colors are on my ribbon here, blue, pink, and white. And the second ask will have more to do with the trans flag. So we ask that the board approve our request to decorate Town Hall a little bit. Oh, and another set of decorations, I think this year we would be able to use blue, pink, and white lights on Town Hall at night, because I think we already ascertained that we have those colors. So that's the first ask.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Is that for also supporting the
No. we
Okay,
haven't gotten
that's
there yet.
just,
so
okay.
far.
I just wanted,
One ask at a time.
okay.
We are on decorations only on the motion. Mr. Manager, any concerns or
No, the only thing I'll say is I'm not 100% sure we can do 3 colors in the lights. We can confirm that, but we can talk to make sure we can
Thank you.
figure it out.
Thanks.
And my only question will be, even though I moved it if possible, was, do you think it'll be possible for us to do the crosswalk as is requested? I know that was done in the Feast of the East at one point, and there was some discussion back and forth about that, but
So my understanding is that the commission members have been talking with representatives of Arlington Public Art, or from now the Commission on Arts and Culture.
Okay.
And I don't know that you've made any final decisions yet, but they were recommending the use of some chalk paint that would
Right,
last for
right,
about a
right,
month or
right,
so.
right,
The only complication will be working with DPW and APD to make sure that we're doing it safely.
Right.
Closing down the roadway in the appropriate
Right.
manner to do the actual application, but we should be able to make it happen.
Kevin, I see you.
Captain Flaherty was at the meeting, and she seemed to think that we could get the road blocked off to get it painted. That shouldn't be a problem, and that we were not going to use DPW resources for that, that you're just going to buy the paint, which is in spray paint cans, and we will preserve the white reflective stripes, but I was just going to go out in the middle of the night and paint them myself. Apparently, it has to be done between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., which is my actual waking hour, so that works fine.
Mel, tell everyone your name.
Oh, sorry. Mel Goldsipe, Mass Ave in the Heights, and I'm the vice chair of the Rainbow Commission.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, we support this, but I wonder whether we should just refer this to the manager. I'm not sure we can do all of this that we're voting on at this moment.
So,
But we support the concept, and just we have to figure out how to get it done, and who does it.
Joe and John, you okay with that, making a motion?
yeah, that's fine.
All right. So,
Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right.
okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please,
I just wanted to note, before we move on from this agenda item,
we got one more to.
I know, I just wanted to make one note. You kind of stole my thunder. I was going to point out that I was really happy that the library director had stayed and that the representatives of the Council on Aging are here, because I know that they've been really big partners on this and a real big reason why we have such a high MEI rating, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, 5-0.
Thank you for your support. We will work with the appropriate town administration to make this happen safely and beautifully. The second ask that I have is a little more serious. There is a ballot initiative this November that will attempt to repeal protections put in place for transgendered individuals in Massachusetts. The question will ask whether the state should maintain the current law that protects transgender people from discrimination. These protections have been in place since 2016 without obvious issue. A yes vote on this ballot initiative would preserve the state law protecting transgender and gender nonconforming people from discrimination in public places, including stores, restaurants, hotels, public transportation, parks, museums, dentist office, and hospitals. A no vote would repeal the law, the protections. The Rainbow Commission has joined Freedom for All Massachusetts. They have a coalition expressing support for keeping this important state law, which provides the same protections that the town meeting added to the Arlington bylaws. But Arlingtonians do not simply stay in Arlington all day long every day, so we hope the board will vote tonight to join us with the Freedom for All Massachusetts Coalition to declare Arlington's continuing support for retaining these important protections statewide.
Mrs. Vaughn.
I'd like to make a motion to approve support of the Freedom Massachusetts Coalition's efforts, including upholding Massachusetts non-discrimination laws regarding gender identity.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Mahan and seconded by Mr. Curo. Any further discussion? Mr. Curo.
I just want to note that, it's true, Arlington passed that in town meeting. I just want to note that we passed it unanimously, and we passed it before the state got to it, so it makes sense that we stick to our guns on this.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0 vote. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much for your support.
All right. Next up, we have a tree hearing, a request for removal of a Norway maple opposite 54 Foster Street for Gibbs School. Tim McQueen, tree warden, are you up first on this one? So just so people know, we have a memo from the warden in our packet. We have a letter from a neighbor in the packet. And I guess we see on our desks, we've got a diagram of, so why don't you go for it?
Okay, good evening, and thank you, everybody, for your time. Much appreciated. I'm Tim LaQueve. I'm the Arlington Town Tree Warden, and the Arlington Engineering Group reached out to me about perhaps having permission to remove a Norway maple approximately directly across the street from 56 Foster Street. And the idea was to install a student drop-off area for the Gibbs School project. So this would require a curb cut and actually moving that roadside into the public right-of-way. And so this is where they asked for some assistance. So it's a Norway maple, 19-inch DBH, and it's healthy. So Norway maples are on the invasive species list. This started in January 1st, 2009. Norway maples are not permitted to be propagated, planted, or transported in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But that being said, they're still protected under Massachusetts General Law under Chapter 87. And it's a healthy tree. So therefore, the tree warden does not have permission to remove that tree. A public hearing is required under Chapter 87. So we advertise 2 weeks. We post the tree itself, Arlington Town website, the Arlington Advocate, and 2 public places, typically Town Hall and DPW. This gives residents an opportunity to reach out to me for an objection. I prefer to have folks that are interested to attend the tree hearings. That way there's a discussion.
God bless you.
But they are permitted to write me. So I did receive a letter from a resident objecting the removal of the tree. So the town engineers, they reached out for an appeal. So here we are. It's on tonight's agenda for discussion.
And in this diagram, what we're talking about, which, this tree number 1 and tree number 2. Which one are we talking about? Number 2?
If you're looking at your sheet, it's
Yep.
the one furthest to the left.
Yeah, tree number 2. Okay, thank you.
Move approval?
As in, take it down? Okay.
Yes,
As
sorry.
just
I'm sorry. Move approval for the removal of the Norway maple tree, tree number 2.
Thank you. Motion for Mrs. Mahan.
Second.
Second by Mr. Greeley. Discussion.
Any members of the public?
Yeah. Any members of the public who are here to talk about this tree? All right, we've got a motion and we've got a second, and we don't have any discussion. All those in favor of Mrs. Mahan's motion as seconded by Mr. Greeley, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, next up, for approval, 8 planters in Arlington Heights Business District, Jane Foley. I should actually say, yeah, Civic Development and of the Arlington Garden Club. Welcome. Might you pull that down, and thank you very much.
My name is Jane Foley, and I'm here as a member of the Support Arlington Heights group, as well as the Arlington Garden Club. This year, as part of Civic Development, Garden Club members joined with the 3 Arlington neighborhood groups to strengthen support of beautification and to develop an awareness of the efforts across town to make our community a desirable and pleasant place to live and work and visit. Tonight, I'm requesting you to approve the latest endeavor, which is to beautify the Heights District with planters that will enhance the efforts already begun by the Public Works, by the repainting of the light poles and the replacement of the town directory, the signs at Park Avenue and Mass Ave. With the support of Support Arlington Heights, the Arlington Garden Club, Arlington Public Works, the Arlington Chamber of Commerce, and local businesses, including La Carta Landscaping and Classic Kitchen and Bath, we have everything ready to go if we receive your approval. We are hoping to place 6 to 8 planters within the boundaries of the business district areas that have been approved by Michael Rademacher, the head of Public Works, for the safety of citizens and traffic flow. We hope that the planters will be a permanent fixture, and the Garden Club and citizen volunteers will maintain them throughout the year. Thank you for considering our efforts in beautifying another section of Arlington.
Move approval?
Joe?
Second.
Motion is second. I've got a question. So I may have missed this, but I think I just caught it when you said the directory that's there at the intersection, you're saying that's part of this project as well? Or are you just saying?
No, we're just pleased that they've been replaced and given a new plastic finish so that they won't be scarred anymore, and they're painted and it's starting to look pretty good.
Got it. Thank you. Mrs. Hahn.
I just want to thank Mrs. Foley and the Arlington Garden Club, because I know you've done, and your members, but especially you, Jane, a lot of behind-the-scenes work. I think you met with Mike Rademacher and Ally Carter, and
I had no clue what I was getting into.
she
trust
really
me.
had no, I've seen her during her journey on this, and she's like, I can't, but I know you've committed many, many hours to ensure that, A, this happened, and also it happened safely and in the appropriate location. So I wanted to thank you for championing this, and also the Arlington Garden
You're
Club.
welcome. My civic development year is finished in June, so this is my last big hurrah. So I'm hoping that I hear yays from all of you.
Thank you for your
John.
service.
I spent a lot of time up in the Heights and with my boys, and so I think this will be beautiful. Thank you for taking this on. And I just want to say I have 2 boys that are quite active, so if they do knock one of these down in their pursuits, I'll be sure to, I
hope
apologize in
not.
advance, and I'll replace it.
Yeah.
That's what I envisioned.
I'll hold
When
you to
I
it.
first saw the picture of these, I said, one of my boys is going to knock
It's
this
going to take it out. Mr. Greeley.
Take care of it.
So I would never say no to Jane Foley, who's the reason I met my wife some 26 years ago now downstairs in this building. But I am just curious, there's a hard planter in the Heights as well. Who's taking care of these 8 planters as well? I assume you have volunteers on the hard planter, right?
Yes.
Or is there 2 there?
The businesses in the Arlington area all volunteer to adopt islands. And this year, Marilyn and Marie Dowdy are the co-chairs, and we have 2 to adopt. So if anybody wants to adopt a planter, we have 2 still available. But we've been very fortunate for all the planters that are out there in Arlington. They're all being adopted, so.
Can I switch and volunteer for a planter and someone take over the island I do? Or?
You got to talk to one of the chairs, because I'm leaving this whole business.
This is her last one.
This is it. Don't get me involved in that, Kevin.
Any further discussion? All right, we've got a motion from Mr. Kuro, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you so much.
You got your gays. All right, next up on the consent agenda. So we try to approve everything in consent agenda in a single vote, unless there's any objection from a member. First up is the minutes of the meeting on May 7th. I worked with the board administrator beforehand to adjust the very last vote to record that it was a 4-1 vote on the comptroller's contract. So please accept that as the motion before you, or when we get to a motion, please include that. For approval, concert on Jefferson Cutter House lawn, Saturday, June 2nd at 1 p.m. From Heather Lavelle, director of the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum. We have for approval the 20th Annual Feast of the East on June 16th. We've got Jan Whitted from the Capital Square Business Association asking for that. For approval, the annual Arlington for All Ages 5K race, September 9th, 2018. Susan Karp, Executive Director of Council on Aging, I'm sure is going to stand up for that in a minute. We have a request for a special one-day beer and wine license for a private event, Sarah Sontag. And we have a request for a contractor drain layer license, Joe Lamacchia Landscaping. Is there do I have a motion?
Move approval.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Anyone here to talk about any of these things? You're up. We can have you go second, but you'd be waiting. It looks like you'd be waiting for a while.
No, it's all right. Good evening.
Welcome.
It's nice to see all of you, and I don't believe we've had the pleasure prior to tonight. So, Mr. Hurd, I am here tonight to request our annual event of the 5K race, which is the primary fundraiser of the Council on Aging. Last year, we operated the race underneath the Health and Human Services Charitable Corporation, and we're aligning ourselves with the Age Friendly. So therefore, we changed the name to Arlington for All Ages 5K race. It has been a very successful community event over the last 9 years. I was like, wow, that time has gone by. Each and every year, we build with a number of runners. This year, we have changed a little bit of the format. In prior years, we would give our winners, if you will, gift cards. Well, one of the donors has requested that their sponsorship be in cash. So this year, we're able to give cash prizes for those individuals that are running. It will begin the same as it is every year in front of Town Hall. It will end at the Senior Center, and I believe if we're on the luck side, then the construction of the driveway will be done prior to that, but that's what we'll be planning on doing. So it is really for all ages in Arlington. It is a USTA certified race, so those that are really counting their time, they can come into Arlington. It's a pretty fast course. It's a lot of fun. It involves a lot of community members. We use about 75 volunteers of all ages, and we have a great time and, raising money. I mean, tonight you've heard that, I participate with the LGBT community, and we're sponsoring the picnic. I'm really excited about that. We work with a lot of groups that are difficult for us to reach. We supplement the program so that all of our programs are low cost so that everyone has an opportunity to participate. So we ask again for the approval to go ahead and do this.
Move approval.
Yeah, we have a motion, but so I guess, and I also read in there that you're looking for sponsors,
We are.
and I read that you made a sponsorship yourself.
I forgot that letter was going to, yes, I did. I did. I believe in the organization that I work. I personally love what I do. I am privileged, what I say, to work for an incredible staff between information referral, the 2 social workers, the nurse. Anybody in there works 200% every day, and that is my testament to not only what I do and what I believe, but in honor of all of their efforts to meet our goals and to serve the needs of the older adults in Arlington.
Yeah. I was.
On the van drivers, oh, pardon me, Jim.
Yeah, the van drivers.
The van drivers.
I was really impressed with that commitment. I'm in.
Well, I am impressed with my colleagues and all those that we serve.
All right. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, I just want to say I've had a little bit of a front row seat as your liaison to the Council on Aging, and last year the COA took on the organization of this under the Health and Human Services Foundation umbrella, and really it was the most successful race ever. So I anticipate even more success coming this year. I think it takes a lot, I know, out of the members, and as Susan said, it's a lot of volunteers, but with this new structure and the Health and Human Services Foundation umbrella, I think it's been very successful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Is there anyone else here for any of the other consent items? We have a motion by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Greeley. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and get your shoelaces and shoes on.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, licenses and permits. National Grid petition Mountain Avenue. This is a public hearing. You fall into the category of things that we tried to do early, and everything was something I tried to do early. Could you please introduce yourself and welcome?
I'm Kelly Roberts. I'm a permit coordinator at National Grid. I actually live at 53 Lake Street here in Arlington, and I'm here to petition the board for a gas main extension on Mountain Avenue. It's a 45-foot extension of 6-inch plastic pipe to serve it's new construction. I drove up there tonight. There's already a trench in the road, and we're just going to continue along about 45 feet.
Okay. Do I have any questions from the board? And I can see Mr. Joe.
I just had one question. I noticed in here from engineering, it talked about the need for, grinding if this is done before October.
They need a grind and inlay?
Yeah.
It'll be on the, once we request the permit, he just left. Yeah, they put the recommendations or the requirements on the permit once we apply for it through the DPW. I don't know if that street actually needs a grind and inlay because there's already a trench there, so
okay.
It'll be on the permit determined by the DPW.
Okay. I'm happy to move approval subject to all conditions that's set forth.
Right.
Motion made and seconded by, okay, thank you. Any of my colleagues before I go to the public? No. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this? I see you stood up. You're okay? You don't have any, you know, ma'am?
She's with me.
Okay, just say, you stood up and you were ready, like you were ready to tackle that microphone, and I was.
Are you here to protect her?
All right. Any further discussion for the board? Seeing no input from the public. We have a motion by seconded by Mr. Greeley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Next up, Citizens Open Forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak under Citizens Open Forum? Nobody signed up and nobody's raising their hand, so I'm going to move on from Citizens Open Forum. Traffic rules and orders and other business. First up is bike share. We have, I guess, 3 different sub-items here. One is for approval license rules and orders. We're going to have a discussion about a map, and we're going to have, we're being asked for approval for an operator license. Mr. Heim.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. If I may quickly, because this has been going on for a while, and I know this is something that's of interest to the community, I just want to recap very briefly where we started and where we are today. Back in the fall of last year, we started a pilot. We started drafting regulations for a bike share pilot. At some point in time, we shelved those regulations, though they were shared at different points in time, in favor of joining the MAPC's regional RFP, which was on October 30th. Thereafter, the regional RFP selected 2 vendors, Lime Bike and Spin, and a representative from Lime Bike and Spin are here tonight to speak with you and answer any questions, as well as Nat Strasburg from the Planning Department, and I believe Seth Federspiel and maybe some other folks from the Arlington Bike Share Working Group. So these 2 vendors were selected by the regional RFP. On March 26, 2018, the Board of Selectmen authorized the town manager to sign the memorandum of understanding between the town of Arlington and the MAPC. That basically says, we're joining this regional bike share. We're going to work on this together with these 16 other communities, my apologies. And then on April 9th, I shared the first draft bike share regulations with the board to collect some feedback, all the while working with the Arlington Bike Share Working Group and the vendors to try to craft regulations that would work for both the vendors and work in Arlington and protect our interests. So what you have in front of you is these revised license and regulations. Most of it is the same. There are, as you've seen previously, with a few important changes to highlight. The most important thing is to highlight is that the bike share itself worked a little bit different than a dinosaur like myself quite understood. So when we first drafted regulations, it was open to both a dock-based system like Hubway, and it was open to dockless systems. As we obviously advanced in the RFP process, the dockless system became the focus from a perspective of what's actually coming to Arlington. And it was important to understand that that system works a little bit differently than the dock-based system. So it was not as important to have a specific approval for a grant of location in this spot or this spot or this spot, as much as it is that when you're approving a license, you're essentially approving that bike share, dockless bike share, to operate on the public ways in Arlington. And that includes a lot of flexibility with respect to where they park their bikes. So what you'll see in these regulations is a lot more attention to, okay, the whole point of this, especially with the last mile issue, is for folks to be able to take these bikes where they want them and also to be able to get bikes where they want them and not to exercise so much regulatory control on exactly where the bikes are and where they'll only be parked and available. So that was adjusted to put a lot more regulation into what's a safe way of parking these bicycles, where can you leave them? You can leave them essentially in a way on the tree belt, as long as it's not impeding pedestrian access, as long as it's not raising ADA concerns. There's a little bit more detail in here about recalibrating or rebalancing bikes, or what happens when a bike's inoperable and they've got to be removed or rebalanced within 24 hours of receiving a complaint. There's some of the things that the selectmen wanted to see with respect to making sure it was very clear that there was a way for non-users to contact customer service. And those are the types of details. I know that there are some additional comments that the vendors had about the regulations, some things that they wanted considered to maybe be tweaked. And I want to give those people an opportunity, as well as Nat Strasburg, to talk about where we anticipate bikes will be in terms of sort of a hotspot map. The one thing I will say is that we're trying to get this together in a fashion that an application would actually be ready from Limebike or from Spin. Unfortunately, we couldn't make that happen fast enough in terms of getting their application in front of you. So right now, what's in front of you is the regulatory scheme here, and this sort of hotspot map, which will give you an idea of where we anticipate bikes will be.
Okay. Did we actually get that map?
No, I haven't seen the map.
Okay, because, we haven't seen it yet then. Okay. All right, okay. So, so the only thing you're actually asking, so you're asking for an approval of regulations tonight if we feel like we're ready.
Yes.
And we're in discussion of the map and discussion of the applications.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman. I don't think the applications aren't on the table. We didn't receive them, so we don't have anything in terms of an application to receive. With respect to the licensing, the only other thing that I'd add is that, again, we're working with 16 other communities, and every community works a little bit differently. So we've tried to do what works here in Arlington. There are pieces that I think are best. It's my recommendation that we more individually negotiate, such as the exact details of an indemnification agreement and the exact details of a data sharing agreement, because those pieces don't necessarily have to be in here. So you'll see a reference that says you need to execute an indemnification agreement with the town. You need to execute, a data security agreement with the town. So those are a little bit more individual negotiations. The insurance requirements that are in here basically follow a lot what we do for taxis and hackneys, except they were the same amounts as articulated in the MAPC competitive procurement.
Any questions from the board before we get, just so I'll get questions from the board, then I'll ask Nat and any of the representatives to speak.
Just a follow-up to the chair's question, because I drifted off a little bit, and I apologize. Just in terms of after we have the discussion on these different items, before us we have, under this A, B, and C. Are you asking us, it sounds like at least one, if not two of them, one application's having been submitted, and another one sounds like there's still conversation. So my question is, and I apologize if you said this and I didn't get it, of A, B, and C, what are you looking for an action by the board?
This evening, we're only looking for approval of A. The hotspot map is going to be presented to you for your information and discussion and questions. And we didn't receive any applications from the operators who were selected, so we're not ready to go on the application, which is C.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I apologize.
Yes, John?
I don't know if this will be better asked once the vendors come up and speak, but just because I'm a little behind on getting into this process. So for the dockless systems, someone gets a bike, they can't obviously bring it inside their house, it has to be left on public property. And so they can drive it all the way to their house, they just have to leave it out somewhere
Is it
accessible to the public?
Is it appropriate for me to, Nat, do you want to come on up and talk about what dockless bike share system means in general? Oh, sure. Yeah. Or, yeah. Okay, great. So I'm going to give you free rein in a minute. For now, just you could talk to John's question about what dockless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So dockless is
actually, sorry, introduce yourself.
Oh, excuse me. My name is Scott Mullen. I'm an East Arlington resident, Precinct 3, and I also work for Limebike. Recently rebranded to Lime. I keep forgetting that. We're Lime Mobility now. We have multiple vehicles in our fleet. Dockless bike share is, so Hubway is what people know as bike share. It's a dock-based system.
Sure.
It's very expensive. Stations run $60,000 for 10 bikes and 19 docking points. They're physically limiting because you have to put them down, and you can pick them up, but it's kind of a pain. You need a crane, you need permits, all that sort of stuff. We put all the technology on the bicycle. Okay, so the bike has a brain, it has a lock, it secures to itself. you pick it up where it is, and you drop it off where you're going. So this is beyond first, last mile transportation. This is first, last 10 feet.
Yeah.
And it really uncovers flexibility and travel patterns that we hadn't seen with dock-based, which is like a landline telephone. You have to go to it to use it. And these dockless bikes are more like a cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they would drive it, say, to their house and leave it on the sidewalk. in
Parked
front of
responsibly, not blocking ADA access, anything like that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And when I read these provisions, the first thing that I thought of, and I don't know if you've had any experience with this, and I'm sure you haven't, because I think bicyclers are more tame, but I thought of Southie in the winter and someone shoveling out a parking spot. And do you ever have issues with someone that lives in the Heights and they drive their bike to their house intending to drive it back to the T in the morning, and then they come out in the morning and someone else is taking the bike?
We don't have a reservation system. Exactly. You could leave the bike unlocked all night and get charged for it all night, but that's not practical, right?
Right.
Who would leave a cab in the driveway with the meter running?
Right.
But that speaks to sort of when you think about dockless bikes, sure, you need to have a certain critical mass. You can't just have 50 bikes. That's not going to work, and for reasons that you just described. And because these bikes sort of are distributed throughout the entire footprint of the town, they're not geographically limited like a system like Hubway, which I used to work for, by the way. Still am a member, and I love it to death. But what we're doing here is we're expanding upon the success that they've seen, and we're able to deeply penetrate into all areas of a city where they just have to, due to cost, just sort of incrementally go down. I mean, it's 7 years, and Hubway hasn't gotten to Mattapan yet, and a lot of people are very sensitive about that. So we're able to sort of serve everywhere.
So you don't have any record of incidents amongst users?
Like street fights? No, we don't have
Well,
any.
I don't street fight, but literally that was the first thing that I thought of when I was reading through the regulations, and I didn't think there would be, but I just was wondering if that was anything that ever comes up, or there's anything.
No, not yet. But it certainly speaks to the demand, and we have to make sure that we provide vehicles that will match that demand.
Adam?
So, well, if I may, Mr. Chair, so it would strike me as though if the hot spots are calibrated correctly and the rebalancing is done as expected, any resident should never be all that far from a bike. So even if it's not immediately in front of their house where they left it, there still should be some reasonable proximity up along the more busy corridors for a resident to access a bike. So it's not, again, it's not 2 feet out the door, but it's not back down at Alewife or, very far away.
Yeah. And just one general comment, and you might be able to speak to this just in practice too, is in the regulation, when we talked about this before and talked about retrieving bikes that had been left for an extended period of time, then I went through the regulations, and I think it says 7 days. That seems like a long period.
So if I remember right, it's like there's an agreement for 24 hours, and 7 days is when we can just start doing it ourselves.
Okay.
Doug, do I?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, the way that we constructed this is that there's a 24-hour customer service line that provides support, and both the representatives from Line Mobility and from SPIN were very, very supportive of that, and noted that, they can respond to any complaints or issues with respect to safety or something being parked in a really, really inappropriate place. The sort of 7 days piece of it is a way of trying to ensure that there's some kind of recalibration for a bike that's just sitting there not being used at all for a really, really extended period of time. So it's not so much that the bike is parked there and somebody's called to complain about it, or, whether it's a user or a resident or whatever. It's more that, if there's a bike that's just sitting on a Spy Pond field, and it's been there for 7 days, we're asking them to be responsible about reasonably recalibrating. And I think that they had pretty sophisticated ways of doing that, to be honest with you, that are a little different than I had anticipated. So I don't know that that'll actually be much of an issue, but.
Okay. So Kevin's patiently waiting, and I'm going to get you but while we're on it, so Doug, then 3B5, so top of page 6. Any bicycle that is parked incorrectly or inoperable shall be reparked or removed by the vendor within 24 hours of receiving notice. So that's the receiving notice.
Receiving notice.
Okay, got
it. And the other thing that I will say that I did not understand, I don't want to speak for these folks, but I didn't quite understand that the bikes are not that hard to move.
Yeah.
So that there's going to be a certain amount of complaints, but if something's like a little bit too close to somebody else's bike, I kind of thought that they had like this locking mechanism that would really make it difficult to move them. But I think as we saw from the Lime bike demonstration that came in here and then the discussion with these folks, practically speaking, I don't know how often people will call instead of just being like,
Yeah.
I'm moving this, a couple inches over, but if they call, and these folks have represented that they can respond to those complaints.
Okay. Kevin, you're up.
So, you said something that confused me, so so I come on the bus from Harvard Square, and there's a bike right out here, right, parked correctly, and I take it, and I live about 1.5 miles up to Mystic Street. So I can just take it home and properly park it on my sidewalk on Mystic Street. But then did I hear you say, but I'm charged for it overnight?
No,
Oh,
sorry, I
did
was
he
saying,
say that to you or no?
if he
Sorry.
wanted to reserve the bicycle, then you would
Oh, okay.
in theory, you could leave it unlocked overnight and it would be your bike.
Okay.
But no, if you park it, once you lock it down, your
Right.
trip ends, you're charged for that trip. It's $1 for 30 minutes. I believe spin is the same.
Yeah.
And that's it. And essentially, you would just use it again in the morning if you want, but you don't have to. Maybe the next day's raining and you decide to get into work a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's just that Mr. Hurd's going to show up and take it off your driveway.
Well, no, it's funny. I was in the market for a bicycle this weekend, and now I might hold off and just save me some money.
Joe,
But
sorry.
just a general comment. 7 days seems a little long for me for a bike to be before a bike gets recalibrated, or is that, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but, I don't think we want to have a system that requires somebody to file, to call the system, call the company in order to get them to come move the bike. So, go ahead.
I believe that 7 days was written in for the town's protection to say, if you've called me and I haven't done what I've said I'm going to do, you guys just say, we're going to put it in DPW yard. I think that was the issue. So we know our bikes where they are at all times.
Yeah.
It would never lay in Spy Pond Field for 3 days because that does no good to the brand and to bike share, Dockless Bike Share as an image and as a model. And it doesn't help if it's not being ridden. So we recalibrate these. I'm not necessarily going to go out and recalibrate every 24 hours a specific bicycle because I don't want to take that trip that you may want to make in the morning before you've made it, right? So, but we're constantly looking. We've got vans that are constantly around doing the redistribution, the balancing that Adam talked about. Very robust ground game in terms of operations to make sure things are orderly and managed. 7 days, I mean, there's not that many bikes. We need the revenue, so we want to make sure that they're in the prime spots.
The crux of my question to you would be, would a bike ever sit there for 7 days? And it sounds like you're saying that it would not.
Very, very rarely. I'm not going to say never because we haven't seen everything yet, but very rarely. Yeah.
Okay.
Other comments from the board? We'll get another round in a second. All right, so Nat and vendors. Nat, did you want to go first, or do you want to have anything?
Well, I just wanted to thank
introduce yourself.
No,
Yeah.
my apologies.
Yeah, no.
Good evening, board members. My name is Nat Strasberg. I'm Senior Planner in the Department of Planning and Community Development. Good to see you. I'm very excited to be here because the Bike Share Working Group, made up of members of TAC, ABAC, EELS, we have DPW, police on there. We've made a lot of progress since we first saw you about this many months ago. And tonight I'm very excited that we have members of SPIN and Lime with us who have begun to put together a fantastic map of these hot spots that they'd like to share with you. I just wanted to give that brief introduction, how excited and wonderful it is to be in this place right now. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so you're up. Does one of you?
Just briefly explain the two colors in the map. Yeah, go for it. So you'll notice that this is primarily the arterials, right? And it's important to note that there's two ways that a bicycle ends up parked and locked in the public way. And it's either it comes with our teams who have balanced to these hotspots, which can be considered virtual stations, or it comes underneath a rider, and the rider parks it on their own. You're not going to see us in these really deep and high elevation residential areas sprinkling one or two bikes here or there. This is going to be concentrated areas near the downtown business district, near schools, near parks, near the places where people are going to naturally in transit start and end trips, to your point about the bus coming from Harvard Square. 40% of our trips nationwide, and we've had 3.5 million of them since last June in the 60 markets that we operate, 40% of those connect to transit, whether it's a bus, which is key, because a lot of these areas don't have light rail or trolley or whatever. So making these connections and really empowering people to live a car-light lifestyle in a way that's meaningful, that's what this is all about. So you see we're near the arterials. The yellow ones are ones that we haven't necessarily secured yet. Arlington Housing Authority, Monotony Manor, for example, we want to talk about serving Chestnut Manor. We have a robust equity program, which we can talk about after the mapping piece is done. Schools and parks, we haven't yet had those conversations with those departments. We want to make sure that they know what's going on because this is where people are naturally going to sort of gravitate to and from, and we want to make sure that that everybody's on the same page in terms of where our trucks are going to be going to and from.
Yeah, sure. Just introduce yourself and come on up to the mic.
Thanks. My name is
Welcome.
Kyle. What's that?
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I just got here from Seattle like a couple hours ago, so thanks for having me today. My name is Kyle Rowe. I'm the head of government partnerships for Spin. Really excited to bring bike share, and I think it's incredible that we have 15 communities that are approaching a regional bike share system. I've been involved in bike share for a while, both on the public and private side, and I believe this is the largest multi-jurisdictional collaboration I've ever heard of or been involved in, definitely. So that's really exciting. Regarding the map and the locations we're proposing, I'm from Seattle. I talked to Nat about this, and I was willing to, to share what a geospatial analysis would produce. But knowing that we have Scott, who lives here, I lend to their local expertise. So, yeah, we're really excited to be involved, and we're just going to piggyback on to these same locations. And just like the permit says, or the rules and code mentions, if there's a need for Spin to recommend additional locations based on operations that we see, we will obviously communicate that and do so after we're on the ground.
Okay. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Kevin.
So, I'm sorry I'm slow. What's a hotspot? Does that mean there'll be 8 bikes there? I mean, what?
So, as we've been discussing, the bike share working group, as well as talking with Nat, this is where Spin and Lime will deploy the bikes on day one, so on launch. And then when we, throughout the process, we're going to get notified of bikes that are misparked or broken, or maybe been sitting in one location for a couple of days, and therefore we want to pick it up before the 7 days, and you guys pick them all up yourselves. These are the locations that will continually replenish. So while a customer may park the bike where they were going, hence the door-to-door convenience and making it competitive with other modes, these are the areas where you'll likely see the bikes parked really neatly because they're put there by our crews. So at launch and then periodically as we rebalance, and that's generally what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth noting that this is a dynamic map. This is a fluid map. Within a week, we're going to see patterns that we didn't realize, and we're going to adjust, working with Nat and his team accordingly.
But is it one Lime and one Spin bike already each hotspot, or there's more? Or
I don't think
what's the number?
We each have slightly different. I mean, we're the same model, but we each have slightly different operational perspectives, I think. So I don't think you're ever going to see a 50-50. And even if you did, it would be, once someone takes a couple of bikes, everything gets a little bit off at that point. So you're going to see them commingling, but not necessarily 50-50.
But how many would Lime put at one hotspot?
Each hotspot would be probably between 4 and 8 bicycles,
Okay.
is what we're thinking. Sorry. That was a very simple question, and we went around the world for that.
Sorry, I didn't ask it
I was
right.
trying to say, he's asking you, when he goes to hotspot 2, how many does he see?
Similar to how you would look at that map and recognize quickly the areas like that's a really popular area on Saturdays. Our crews are going to learn that as well, and we're going to rebalance bikes to reflect that.
Sure.
So if you see a lot of bikes showing up like right in front of the popular ice cream place on a sunny Saturday, that's why.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I had 2 questions. These hotspots, are these all public property, or are there private locations as well on that map?
I believe they're all public, but Scott made the map.
We have not yet had conversations with Brigham Square, for example, or Arlington. Is it Arlington Gardens? Is the one that down where Warren splits with Broadway. We want to be serving the private property first. We start on public property. This is right away, and this is the process that we're going through right now. I'd be shocked if there wasn't demand from these apartment complexes that want to have this as an amenity. But we don't start there. We start with the town and this collaborative process.
Okay. Or even, grocery stores or whatnot. Yeah. And the other question is, it's similar to Mr. Greeley's. I was just curious whether there are any, I'm trying to envision how the two operators would work together or at cross purposes, if that creates any
I would
inefficiencies or issues.
It's a good question, and we co-operate in many markets already. My competition is not Kyle. Kyle's bringing bikes. Bikes are a good thing. My competition are people in Uber, right? Yeah. My competition is whatever's keeping someone from making a better choice about how they get around. And that's what we're here to do. This is a chance to be transformative. Yeah. So this is not a bare knuckle brawl.
Okay, great. I'd like to move they have one, though.
We're trying to get this bike viewed. I don't know, man.
That's a different licensing.
It's
Sunday.
A new kind of bike gang.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and pending the answer to that, I think I'll have a motion.
Okay.
If that's appropriate. Just on, through the chairman, or to the chairman, where one of the motions will be to adopt this pilot bike share program, license rules and orders. I'm wondering, is there a caveat, where this is a pilot program, we're starting out brand new, is there a caveat, is there an avenue that once, if we do approve this tonight, we see something that isn't working or could work better, what relief do we have, or is this, this is it and you can't amend it till next year, or do you understand my question?
Yeah, let's do it. Doug's nodding, so
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. That's a good question. The first thing I'd note is that Seth Fetterspiel, who's a member of the working group, raised the question of, well, how easy or hard it would be for us to change these things as things are happening. One of the reasons we're doing regulations instead of having more of this work through the statement of work or contract type of process is that we can modify things as quickly as we can get them on the agenda, get in front of you.
Oh, okay.
So that's one thing. The second thing is that there are outs that are built into these systems. I think obviously everybody wants things to be a success, but there are outs that are built in if it's not working and, we need to have a hearing about whether or not a license would be, suspended or revoked because there's, chronic violations everywhere. We could do that, but from what I've seen so far, there's been a lot of responsiveness on behalf of these vendors, so hopefully that won't be the case. But we do have options, and this is a one-year pilot. From my recollection, it's also not these folks' intention to operate in the wintertime. Am I wrong about that? Or maybe decrease the number of bikes in the wintertime?
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that.
Yes, obviously it's weather dependent. Bicycling takes a significant hit in the winter. There are still people who ride, and we want to be able to serve those people. What we did at Hubway was we used it as an opportunity to do the regular maintenance on the bikes, overhauls, that sort of stuff. We remove bikes for major snow events, of course, major weather events. So we get a hurricane in August, we're going to remove the bikes from the street to not be in the way. And we have a whole robust maintenance and operation plan to support that.
So if I may, just to follow up, just sort of case in point to my colleague, Mr. Hurd's question. Say we go through this and for some reason we see an inordinate amount of bikes, 40, 50, 60, that are all the way out to the 7-day limit. And DPW says, hey, this is turning into somebody's quarter-time job. I'm not saying that's going to happen at all, but case in point, that situation, what you're saying is all it would take is necessary work by town officials through the town manager and getting it on the next agenda that we could retool that. We wouldn't have to wait like a whole year.
That's right. In terms of the regulatory process, if we've got a real crisis, we'd have the ability to come back here and say, look, we've got to revise these rules. And at the same time, if there are other things that we've that we find that would be helpful to just make the program better in other ways.
Yeah, if you want to add or amend, okay.
And, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry, I was going to make a motion, but I'll wait, I don't want to cut you off.
There are just a few other things I want to note. I know that these folks did have some things that they wanted to advocate for within the regulations. I don't know if these folks want to do that or not, in terms of some feedback that they sent to me as vendors about this.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a work in progress, if that's okay.
Yeah,
No,
go for
that's
it, yeah.
thanks, Doug.
So we just,
my apologies.
No, that's okay, no, just let me know when, I just want to make the motion, that's all.
They may be trying to change your motion, so let's.
All right, okay.
So I just submitted my feedback this morning to the site license, or excuse me, the license agreement. And there's a few key points in there. Section 3BI, around ADA language, it differs slightly from the master MAPC contract, which talks about we must be.
Hang on, are you in the regs or in the licensing agreements?
He's in the draft regulations.
The draft regs.
So,
Page 5.
Page 5. Oh, 3B, oh, so sorry. Okay.
And
yes, freestanding bike share bicycle shall be parked?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's giving a 6-foot standard. And
Sorry, am I on the right page?
3BI right here.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you could just, I cut you off, if you could start again.
oh, no, that's okay. So basically, on the ADA language, we would just ask that that's changed to be ADA compliant, which is giving us a 4-foot buffer for the right-of-way, to be clear. It's, this is not a city of big sidewalks, and I think to go to a 6-foot standard means someone who doesn't like this is going to be out there with a couple of yardsticks and noting us when we're 1 inch off. So I think it's just important that we start off on the right foot. 4 feet is through the master contract with MAPC, and we would like to see that to be consistent if possible.
That's 3BI.
Correct. Under 3BIV, we would ask that we remove the terms transit zones and street furniture around places where we can be parked adjacent to. And it's important, I know the 40% statistic that we're seeing nationwide in our fleets of the connection to transit, and a lot of that is connecting to bus stops. And we don't want there to be any confusion around that. We certainly aren't going to block the bus stop where the entrance and egress to the buses are. But this is mostly concerning up Mass Ave, especially the part that has been redesigned down to the park, where there's plenty of space on either sides of shelters. These concrete areas have been built out. So we just ask that they remove those so there's no confusion, that we can actually do that. And the best part, I mean, these benches, this is where people go. This is where people want to stop and park a bike and sit down with a friend and have an interaction that's organic. And it seems slightly out of place. The other ones, fire hydrants, all of that makes complete sense. But those two stood out to me. Do you have anything? Do you want me to keep going?
You're so far in agreement. Yeah.
Okay, good. The data dashboard, or excuse me, the API we're talking about in section 5. I just need a little bit more clarity, and I want to work with Doug on that. I think you said there's going to be a separate document around data clarity and security, because API means one thing, but it also means a couple of things. What we have and what we offer to any city that we operate in is a robust data dashboard. Just released it a couple of weeks ago. It's real time. It gets updated every day, not real time, but you'll see, you can look at yesterday's trips, you can look at last week's trips, you can look at last month's trips. Not only the number, you can see how many people, you can see the actual route mapping. You can see where these rides are happening, and I know Nat's excited about that, and this is going to help inform infrastructure into the future. I just want to make sure that, because API is one thing, and I just want to get some clarity there, because I know my engineering team is going to ask me, so.
Can I just ask? No, you ask. You might ask my question more awfully.
So I guess it is, so one of the things that I think does matter, that I've definitely been excited about, and I suspect that Nat probably is too, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, Nat, is that we do want a programmatic way to get that data.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, Nat, you're going to tell me if I'm wrong, but we would take it in like a form of like a CSV, or we'd take it in the form of an API, but we want something, like if we've got a dashboard,
yeah,
and then we don't, and then like the next day the dashboard is different, and then the next day the dashboard is different.
Yeah,
that isn't a way that we can consume the data and like really learn from it. We need a programmatic way to get it so that we can get it over time in a, mechanical format.
Understood.
So that is important,
Yeah.
I think. Exactly. Yeah.
So just a quick comment on that one. Data privacy is definitely a concern we're going to want to consider at utmost degree here. And with Dockless, you have door-to-door trips happening. With the Freedom of Information Act, any data that becomes on your servers basically is now available to the public. And even though the data set is technically anonymous, with single-family homes and door-to-door trips, it wouldn't be very hard for someone to back-end out travel behavior. So one element that I take really seriously in how we should agree to share data, often because our partners on the public side are used to station-based programs where it's kind of like transit. The nodes are at the bus stops or the train stops. That's not the case here. Just like with Uber and Lyft, you might call the Uber and Lyft at your front door. That we just think about PII, personally identifiable information, in terms of how we share. And in the case of a multi-vendor situation, there's also proprietary info. 2 vendors isn't as big of a concern as some of our other markets we're in, where it's much more, I guess, heated competition. In this case, we each won a very competitive contract, so I don't see that being as big of an issue in this market, the way that this regulatory framework is being played out. But the PII I would really raise as a potential concern with us saying, here's all the trips.
5B, bike share operators shall take measures necessary to ensure the API does not personally identify users in any way.
Right. So
gotcha.
So even a technically anonymous data set, with 4 points of time and location data, you can back end out 85% of the population based on current research. So this has all been discussed in many of the markets we're working in, and there are tools to address it. And we'd be happy to work with your staff on that. But one, there is a potential concern with us saying, here's a CSV of all the trips, and then a member of the public, PDR, well, whatever you call it, FOIA, requesting that data.
Yeah, so I guess, all right, so maybe I wasn't clear. So I don't think, we're not trying to get a copy of every trip, but we are trying to get transportation data.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think of a dashboard as sufficient transportation data. Transportation data, a dashboard is current status. It's not transportation data.
We want to share with you all the data that you need to do all the planning. This is one of the incredible powers of this data, is the granularity that it has to inform planning your bike network, many things. Let's just make sure we do it in a way that is safe for our customers.
Yep. So, Ms. Mon, I don't know if we answered your question, but in my mind, I don't feel like there's any I don't have any language yet that I want to change here in that section, unless.
Okay, and I'm comfortable with that, and what, if I could ask through the chair to Attorney Heim, Doug, I apologize, I didn't get this. It seems like, are you asking us if the chairman's comfortable with the API citation and the definition attached to that? I think I'm hearing that these gentlemen, or one or both, may want to have some more conversation around that and present a different or parallel definition. Are you saying we should vote this document? I'm hearing like this API, is this still up for discussion? My thing is, I don't want to vote something if it's, I have no problems if my colleagues agree with amending, 1.3BI, removing language in 3BIV, if that's the way they want to go. Are we ready to vote on this tonight? It seems to me like there's still more conversations, or that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
what do we want to do?
So, I see Adam and Doug both waving, and I also want to have an opinion, so let's see what they say first.
Okay.
Yeah. Adam.
Just to be, yes, thank you, Ms. Pond. I understand the way I presented it may have been confusing to folks. All I was trying to say is that I know that these folks had some feedback on the regulations that I drafted, and I don't feel like it's my job to advocate for them. I feel like it's my job to advocate for the town. So I just wanted them the opportunity to present the things. To be frank with you, I think that most of the things that they're asking for are not concerns of mine if they're not concerns of the board. If the board's okay with 6 feet rather than 4 feet, I think I'm sorry, 4 feet rather than 6 feet, that's fine with me. In terms of the transit zone and street furniture, I think that there are good arguments being presented here, and if the board's okay with that, the board's okay with that. With respect to this specific issue, I feel like we could approve something tonight if we just insert language like, or similar satisfactory data application, with the understanding that it would be incumbent on me to make sure that they're getting the message that this is what the board needs and wants. So I didn't want to be in the position of I'm advocating for changes that they want made as far as these types of things. Yeah. I don't know if manager has.
So I was going to say that I think we came here tonight and put this all on the agenda, thinking there was the possibility that we would be asking the board to adopt the license rules and orders as well as approve license applications so that we can get bikes on the streets very soon. But since we don't have that application, I think my understanding is the pressure is at least somewhat relieved, and we could have a little further discussion about this data issue and come back at the next meeting, unless I'm wrong and that throws us entirely off course.
I believe how it's currently worded isn't a problem. API is very general, and so how we define that API is really, and the mechanism for sharing it is really the critical piece.
I agree with that.
And that's totally surmountable as currently written, as I believe. Scott is.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you
So-
tell me.
Yeah, so what my statement is that this, to me, this is reasonably strong language for the town. And if the vendors are unable to meet it, then they need to make Nat happy. And if Nat's happy and he comes to us and says, here's a new regulation that we can adopt, then we can, but like, I would rather us lean into this and be a little bit more aggressive here and then come to another negotiation later if necessary. Okay. So do you have other changes you wanted to suggest?
Yeah, I cut you off at the 5 API.
Yeah, okay, please.
So in section 6, there's talk of a fee, a licensing fee. This is something, it was actually a small surprise to me because working with MAPC and the 15 communities, we have been told that 14 of them are not asking for this. There was one who shall remain nameless that sort of got me off guard at the very end of, hey, we're about to deploy bikes, and then there was this, Seattle price fee that sort of came in. Everybody else, to my knowledge, is on board with no fee, which is something that we would ask to forego a fee in year 1, just because, we have a lot of stuff going on. MAPC gets a cut. The T wants some money for site license. It's like, the sort of thing, there is no guarantee of success here. And we're just looking to, it'll open the floodgates. If we do one fee here, then it's 15 fees. And now it becomes not nominal. So we would ask that $300 fee be waived in year 1, if that's okay to be removed.
I'm willing to go along with it with the most favored nation. Is that if they pay to somebody else, then we have to pay too? Then we get paid too? Like if they can successfully thread the needle that all 16 are not paying, then I don't want to be the one. But if somebody else puts the screws to them.
Saying that, we can put it in there for the first year only, we waive the $300 fee with the caveat that if any and/or the rest of the 15 communities or 14 communities?
16 including us, 15 others.
Implement any such fee, that will void out and will receive the same. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is.
I'm not saying it very artfully.
Yeah, but I think that's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Kevin?
We set fees based on what we perceive to be the cost of administrating. And is that how 300 came about? Through you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me.
Yeah, no. The answer is no. We've struggled with this because we really don't know how much town time it's going to take to administer this program. So we could count out the amount of time it would take to, literally produce the paper that the license is carried upon, which some license fees are based on that. But in terms of DPW time or police department time or Nat's time in the planning department, we really don't have a good sense of how much time we're going to spend as town staff sort of policing or managing compliance or monitoring compliance with the license.
I don't know. I favor giving them a year break, but not because what they're doing in other communities, although we're trying to be a good neighbor to these 16, 15 other communities, but I'm not a biker, so I should be the last one to decide on this.
It was John, then Joe.
When you say 14 other communities have agreed to waive the fee, have you already been through this same process with those 14 communities? And
Not with all 14. My hair is not completely white, but yeah, about half of them. And MAPC, again, it was the assurances, perhaps it was a miscommunication, but they had told me that Arlington had agreed not to charge a fee as well, and it seems that might have been a miscommunication. So, but it was a surprise to me. when I saw that today.
Joe?
I have a comment on this, and I have a couple questions. Strikes me that with the fee, especially given that we don't have any real track record to base things on, that it might be reasonable to put in here that we're waiving the fee during the pilot year with the understanding that the board will adopt a fee schedule based on the experience of the pilot for future years going forward. So that's kind of my proposal on how to handle a fee. I don't have any problem with the other proposals for language changes. I did have two questions. So when we were looking at transit zone and we were looking at street furniture, I saw the word parklet in there. What is that referring to? Parklet.
Oh, what is a parklet?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's no parklets in Arlington. A parklet is when you take a parking spot and you use it as an extension of the sidewalk for any manner of pedestrian-oriented activity. So Lexington in front of the, what's the name of that cafe? The Spin Cafe or the?
Oh, Ride Studio.
Ride Studio. They have 2 parking spaces they've taken, and it's an extension of the Ride Studio's outdoor dining, and
Okay.
that's what a parklet is. But
Okay,
you can
so it's just to
envision
protect
any
us
use of that
if we were
space,
to
ever
ever
to
implement parklets. Okay, great. And my other question has to do with the insurance and indemnification. I read through, and it looks like most of this is just concerning liability. I was just wondering, does this language cover and protect us in case one of the bicycles is stolen, damaged, or whatnot? We're not on the hook for that.
I'm certainly going to take a strong position that we're not on the hook for bicycles that are damaged. But no, there's no way that there would be liability. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. There's no way that liability would be attached to the town for damage unless the town is going about taking bicycles and trashing them. There's no way that the town has any liability.
I'm just making sure.
And again, I think that this is important just so people in the public know that this is not just about protecting the town, it's also about making sure that similar to taxes in Hackney, that we know that these folks have insurance for their riders as well.
Right. Right.
Okay. Back to, sorry. Kevin.
So, I didn't see this, but is this license for a certain number of bikes?
Yes, Mr. Greeley. It's for 300 total bikes. I want to compliment these folks here. To my understanding, have worked out that distribution. Is that correct, Nat? That it's going to be 150 and 150. Is that right? Yeah. So we're licensing up to 300 bicycles under these regulations, and everybody has to have a minimum of 50. But the applications will be for 150 and 150.
Do you want to make the motion, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to, and someone correct me if I say it incorrectly, approve the pilot bike share program license rules and orders with the amendments of under section 1(3)(bi), Roman numeral 1, amend the language around ADA and related citations. Under 1(3)(biv), Roman numeral 4, remove the language, the 2 words cited. And under section 6 for pilot fee, that the Board of Selectmen will waive for the pilot year only any fee associated with that, as well as move receipt of the bicycle share hotspot map.
Okay. We have a motion by Mrs. Mahan, second by Mr. Curo. I did want to see if anyone else here wanted to talk about these regs before we went. Not seeing anyone in the audience. Mr. Greeley.
Did she reference the going from 6 feet to 4 feet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That was, yeah. And I wanted to say, just as a comment, that I definitely am happy to support the changing the fee to 0 for the pilot program, that when we talk about it next year, it's not necessarily 300 either. It's like, we're gonna learn as you are, and we're gonna come up with a number that we think is right, which we're not predisposing, is gonna be anything. All right.
And
Is everyone?
I just want to say sincere thank you to Nat. Seeing the exercise that I went, no pun intended, through tonight, I can only imagine, with the town council and town manager and others, how many hours you've put in on this to create this document, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank Anybody else? We may have reached the end of our string. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0 vote. Thank you, Doug, as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Get those applications in.
Yeah,
Get this.
I'm looking forward. I did, so I did some bike share when I was down in New Orleans on, they had a blue bike, is what it was, which is of course ironic because now we've got blue bikes up here. And, got to Jazz Fest, made it back. Got off Bourbon Street at 2 in the morning, in fact.
I'll pull in spring water to that.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it, yeah. Yep.
That's why that liability piece is so important.
I had lights, I was all set. All right, next up, for approval, submission of grant application for net zero planning. Mr. Chapdelaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I learned after putting this on the agenda that I don't need the board's official vote to sign this grant application, that I can sign on as manager, but I'll briefly describe it to you anyway since it's on the agenda. I think the board knows the Energy Working Group has been meeting for a decade working on energy efficiency measures, renewable energy, clean vehicle policy, and all matters related to that. More recently, we've started talking internally about bringing a proposal to the board to rename the group, have an official roster for the group, and make it a more public entity to look forward at net zero planning for 2050, which is one of the commitments of becoming a community in the Metro Mayors Coalition. So we were planning on coming before the board sometime in the next few months with a proposal, but at the end of last week, we learned that the MAPC was looking for another community to join in on an application to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to get technical assistance to start doing net zero planning. So in talking with Ken Pruitt, the energy manager, we both agreed that though we weren't as ready as we wanted to be, applying for this grant made a lot of sense because we know that we were going to be looking for funds to do exactly what this grant could fund, which is starting to do baseline inventories of our greenhouse gas emissions and starting to set the baseline for what we'll need to measure to become net zero by 2050. So we're applying for a grant that could bring in somewhere between $60,000 to $70,000 in planning resources to the town. We'd have to match it with $7,500 or $10,000, which we could do within our existing facilities green budget. So we are applying for that grant. I don't really have a good sense of what our likelihood of success is, but you'll be hearing more from me about that actual committee structure and format that I mentioned in the upcoming maybe month or so.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chapdelaine. Sure. Do you want to come to the mic?
Seth Fetterspiel, member of TAC. I was here for the bike share meeting, but I saw this on the agenda. So my day job is the net zero energy planner for the city of Cambridge. So I was really happy to see this on the Cambridge agenda. I know Ken Pruitt professionally and just want to offer to Arlington to always happy to be a reference as you go down this road and happy to provide advice from Cambridge experience and really pleased that Arlington is prioritizing these actions.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. We are taking you up on that.
You got his name and address?
No, we know.
The committee roster might be expanded by one now.
Good night. All right, update on CDBG subcommittee recommendations. Adam, do you want to?
I'm fine. Whichever you prefer.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had good news coming out of the federal budget in terms of what Arlington's CDB allocation for the upcoming year would be. So we ended up receiving just a little over $100,000 more than what the board voted on and town meeting endorsed. This just several weeks ago. So the Director of Planning and Community Development and our CDBG administrator worked up some recommendations for additional funding to be allocated to the various funding recipients that had already been approved. There's no need for a further vote of town meeting, but we thought it'd be appropriate for public process for the board to see these recommended changes and endorse them or adopt them going forward. So there are three large increases, all in the amount of $27,000 each. One to the HCA, the Housing Corporation's capital improvements request, a $27,000 increase to the ADA compliant Spy Pond Trails project, and a $27,000 increase to the Food Link acquisition of operations location request. There's also a $14,000 increase to the planning studies budget that will further assist the planning department in getting the 2 studies done under CDBG that they were trying to get done this year. One is a fair housing plan, and the other is an ADA accessibility plan, that are both key parts of work that's been underway in the Planning and Community Development Office. And then a series of smaller amounts that I won't read off each one in the public services categories, with the goal of bringing everybody up near to or at what their actual funding request was. People who were already funded fully at their request remained flat. People who were funded at a recommended level below their funding request were brought up as near their funding request as possible, but keeping us within the public services cap.
Let's say, since you're on the CDBG subcommittee, do you have any?
I don't have any additional color. Like, so we did all the work during the subcommittee meetings running up to town meeting, and we created that framework and so on and so forth that we did as a committee that we shared with you running it. So, John, you weren't here, and Clarissa Rowe was on the subcommittee with me, and she offered to be here tonight, but I told her she was off the hook.
This is adding money. This is not something.
Exactly. So we got basically a recommendation, from the professional staff based on those criteria that we'd already developed. So we didn't even meet. So I'm happy to support it. I'm happy to support it. Okay. So this is a 6-person vote. I love these. These are so much.
Does Mrs. Kropelka have to call it or not?
No, yeah.
Mixing up my notes.
So Adam does vote on this. Adam has a vote on this. All those in favor of approving the recommended CDBG updated allocations, please say aye. Aye. It is a 6-0 vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Board Designee Committee appointments, which was not coincidental related to CDBG because Ms. Rowe was on CDBG and I need somebody. And if there's anybody else who wants to change around, Mrs. Mahan.
I would like to do CDBG, but I'd also be willing if there's an appointment that I have, especially with Mr. Hurd. If he had an interest with, I'd be happy to, step down from that. Originally I'd put my name in for CDBG, but Ms. Rowe did also.
Yeah.
And I figured why not take advantage of that, and I figured I'd wait out the year. But if someone has more stronger feelings than I on CDBG, I'd be willing to talk about that, but.
Well, I'll just say, I'm happy to take on whatever role is asked of me. I haven't been here long enough to know which of these subcommittees each member feels strongest about to go in and say, oh, I can replace you on this one or you on this one. But if there are subcommittees that people are willing to give up and.
So I can tell you the one that I do worst is ATED, the Arlington Tourism and Economic Development.
Okay.
So I'm not telling you have to take it because right now, Mr. Greeley and I, we tag team on it.
And I'm equally bad at it.
So, yeah. I'll tell you that I don't actually go to the tree committee meetings, but I do liaise with them off and on. So if you wanted to be more active on that one, for instance.
Sure.
Minuteman Bikeway 25th is done, so that's actually, we can do that. I do enjoy doing CDBG, so I'd like to keep that. I enjoy keeping Rainbow Commission. I don't know, who else has one that they'd consider?
So one other question.
Yeah.
That I thought we had mentioned are we looking for one for the TAC?
Yeah, do we usually have a liaison to the TAC? I know Steve used to go to those meetings.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
if there were ever one that would be a natural one for me to jump on.
We've always had
Yeah.
someone from,
Happy to do that.
member
All right,
of the
so-
board from TAC.
You're right, we should. So let's do that. Okay, sold.
Does Joe have any, or it's fine with the ones you have?
I'm fine with the ones I have, but I am cognizant of, so what do we got loaded up on you? I realize we have to rebalance, just like the dockless
But I
bike
also,
share.
Committee on Tourism,
okay.
take on
Okay.
whoever wants to give it.
Yeah, well, it really should be, I think it would be
It
better
used
if
to
it's
be
one person, and Kevin and I both kind of looked at each other and like, all right, we'll do halvesies. So if you'll do it, I mean, Mr. Greeley, can we pry that out of your hands?
Yes, sir.
It's a good committee, and it's very active. It's just, like, the meetings they're hard for me, and it's a, yeah.
Sorry, I'll add one more thing.
Please.
as far as committee work, and I said this before, I am very flexible during the day. I'm in Arlington, my office is in the center, and I can, work my work schedule generally around a meeting in the afternoon or in the morning. So if I don't know by looking at this, which committee that lends itself to, but I'm around.
Not really any of them, but sometimes I meet during the day, but most
So, Diane and Joe, is there something that you're trying to, that you'd like to move off of or give up or anything, or?
So far for John, it's ATED and TAC.
Which are both meaty.
Right, and for Diane, add Diane to CDBG.
Yeah, that's what I've got so far.
I mean, I'm not chomping at the bit to give anything up, but if you had any interest in Youth Health and Safety Coalition, I could do that. Now, that meets 5:30 to 7 on Thursdays. It's one Thursday a month, and I don't know if that's doable. Unless you want to see how it goes with the first two.
Okay.
Yeah, I would prefer to just see how it goes with the first two. And I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying if you had a burning desire for one of my other few ones, I would,
So is this?
I'd like to stay where, if that's
Okay.
possible.
So is this, but decision of chairman, or is this vote of the committee?
I think it's chair.
Yeah.
Okay, so be it. Diane's on the CDBG, John is on ATED, Kevin and I are off ATED, and John is on. Are you good, Marie? And can we add TAC to that list somehow? You got it? Thank you. All right. Anything else under subcommittee assignments? Good. Excellent. Next up, approval of town manager's evaluation. So this has, we blew through all of our deadlines that we had hoped to get this done in February or March. I forget exactly what the original date that we were trying to get it done was. But in the end, the four of us did separate evaluations, and Diane Mahan and Clarissa Rowe and Steve Byrne collaborated on a fifth one, and so obviously this predates John coming on to the board. And then we changed our process midway through. We made our individual documents public because of a change in the state interpretation of the law. And then I asked Karen Malloy to do a compiled document, which she did, which I shared with the manager earlier this week. I forget exactly, last week. And now I'm bringing it all to you for our approval.
Move approval?
Second.
Any discussion? I guess what I will say, because it bears, oops, as I click on the wrong, I'm trying to pull up my exact copy of it so I can have it right here. As a collective group and individually, we are very happy with our town manager. He got some 5s. He got, I think, as low as a 4.6. The overall score was 4.94. And that's where 4 is, very, very good, and 5 is excellent. And so they're really good marks. John?
Just one question.
Yeah.
My follow-up question every time we talk about these valuations is, should I abstain from the vote?
It is a matter of personal choice for you. Legally, you are entitled to your opinion.
I could say I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with the evaluations. So if I am in fact allowed to vote on it,
You certainly are. Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Chapdelaine, any thoughts?
Just to say thank you for going through the process. I think I say the same every year, or hopefully I say the same every year, that after what is a fulfilling and rewarding experience, I really appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the positive feedback and the praise. That feels good. It feels good to hear nice things said, so that's very much appreciated. And it's good to hear constructive criticism as well. And I think I've said this to several board members, that there's some areas targeted at improvement, and I acknowledge those and realize those areas that I can get better. And it's good to get that feedback, so you know where you can target and how you can keep trying to get better. So, thank you.
All right. Seeing Joe.
No, I think we just owe thanks to Ms. Malloy for doing this compilation year after year.
And thank you for driving it most of the way to most of the way through.
And, you know, and thanks to the manager for actually being so committed to this process. I think it's very important for all of us, and it gives us a set point when as we're entering into goal-setting season again. So, cycle of life.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Correspondence received. We have an aggressive dog complaint at 72 Ronald Road. We have a request to make the intersection of Rhinecliff and Oakland a four-way stop. We have a request no parking here to corner at Warren and Wyman Street. We have a request to reconsider parking regulations on Broadway, and we have opposed to implementing a dedicated bus-only lane.
Move receipt and refer through the chair to the board administrator, Mrs. Kropelka, and/or the town manager, Mr. Chapdelaine, as I see some of these individual to town manager's office and selectmen, but then I also see some
Yep.
carryover. Unless someone wants to do it individually, or.
Yeah, do you mind, let's slog through them, because I think some of them are.
So we have clarity on what
Yeah,
we're doing,
yeah.
so why don't you do that?
Okay,
And
sounds
that will
good.
be my motion.
Sounds good. So dog complaint, town manager, oh, sorry, Doug.
You can, if the board is so inclined, you can refer it to the police department for investigation and hearing if necessary.
Okay, hearing if necessary is, I like that. Okay, so, and Adam, you're on board with that?
I am,
Okay.
yes.
Intersecting Rhinecliff and Oakland Avenue. Do we want to send that straight to TAC, or do we want to ask the
Why don't
manager to take a
Is
look?
someone here on either the,
Oh,
either
that
these
is,
here on either
thank you,
the letters?
thank you, Mr. Greeley. Are you here for one of the correspondence received? All right, I'll get there in just a second. Are you here for one of them? Which? Okay, thank you very much. So Rhinecliff and Oakland four-way stop.
I'd ask if the board's so inclined to refer that to me, and I can ask Jim Feeney to work with the various departments that would need to take a look at that and make a recommendation.
Okay, and if you need to send that to TAC, then, you know.
Come back for that
Let so be it, yeah. I guess I feel like you should, I'm saying, let's let the manager take a look, and if the manager thinks it should go to TAC, then just send it to TAC without further review. Is that? Yeah.
I actually have a comment on that.
Yeah.
Just as you look into it, because I live literally around the corner,
Yeah.
and this intersection drives my wife crazy because we drive down there and I actually stop on Rhinecliff because it feels like
You should.
stop.
Yeah.
So.
Put the signs up
I always
tomorrow.
stop and she says, "Why are you stopping?" But so you could keep that in mind. Reference when you go.
It's going to make
down
your
it.
life easier if we just put the stop sign.
There you go.
So Adam, you got license to send that to TAC if you need to.
Okay.
All right. Next up, no parking here to corner signs at Warren Street and Wyman Street. Come on up to the microphone. Are you Mr. Langbine? Yes, I'm welcome. Why don't you, so once you get to the mic, why don't you say your name again, so as you know, we have millions of people who are still watching at this point, and they need to know who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Langbine. I live on Wyman Street near the intersection with Warren. The story is really pretty simple. We drive from Wyman Street up to Warren Street, and there's cars in either direction, and you can't see an oncoming car. And I've had one near crash myself, and I've seen a couple more.
Okay. Thank you. So I think what I'd like to do is refer this to the town manager, and then the thing, I guess the thing that I have in mind in particular is that I always want to notify the other neighbors before we put up new signs. I feel like just in case, and so is that appropriate for you and Mr. Feeney?
Yeah, absolutely, and this intersection is already the recipient of a recommendation for improvements by TAC that was approved by the board last year, and I think one of these signs that's being requested was already approved and perhaps not installed yet, so I'll verify that. But we can certainly if any signage is to be erected, we can certainly let abutters know.
Okay.
I've informally polled all the people on Wyman Street except two people who weren't home, and everybody thinks it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Parking regulations on Broadway. Miss, you could just introduce yourself briefly and.
I'm Emily Hammond. I own Ready Set Kids, which is the business on Broadway and Franklin across from the Playtime craft store. And since the parking changes in Arlington Center, our several blocks of Broadway, down, those bike guys were taller, have changed, have gone from 1 hour parking to 4 hour parking along with all of Broadway, all of Arlington Center, which I know is a huge project, and I'm not suggesting overhauling any of that. But our section, really the east side, east of Franklin, did not receive parking meters, but did receive the 4 hour parking. So a lot of people are using that as long-term parking. And so the businesses and residents along Broadway and in that area don't have space for our customers, patrons, the residents who live there and such. So it's become quite a problem and making it hard for, so I run a family in Richmond Center. It's making it hard for families to get there. A lot of moms are parking illegally with their car seat in one hand and double parking, and it's becoming a little bit dangerous and frustrating for people. So with your permission, I'd love to talk with a committee about how we can make that easier.
Parking implementation group?
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? And we have a letter opposed to implementing dedicated bus-only lane. I will say that some of the items cited in that letter didn't feel like they were an accurate representation of the actual suggested change.
That is accurate.
Okay.
It's accurate. Actually, if I could speak to that, John and I were both down at the first public forum that was done on this the other night, last week, and yeah, I think that this letter was written actually before that public forum took place. So there are a lot of assumptions, I think, in this letter around what a dedicated bus lane would mean, where it would be placed and such. And there is a process that was laid out last week where I guess there was a lot of input that was taken at the forum, and I think it's August, I think, is the next meeting at which some draft proposals will be coming back into another public forum, and so this is a long process. So I would, on this one, I would tend to recommend that there really isn't necessarily a referral. I assume you'll share this with planning, but and it could go in there as a just as correspondence received to that process. But that's my sense on this.
So this letter, just for clarification, so this letter was handed to me before the meeting.
Yeah.
And it was, I met with business owners who are concerned about one thing, and they had, there's a lot of talk about what this plan is, and it's certainly, they have ideas of what has happened in other jurisdictions, which I think is, scaring people a little bit as to what will happen in this plan. And, I had talked to Adam about this, and we assured them that there's going to be a lot of public input. That's the main thing about this plan, is there's going to be a lot of public input, and we hear the businesses, we understand how important the parking is to the people in the Capitol Square area, which is these businesses mainly centralized around the Capitol Square area. But it was, like you said, it was before the meeting. I think the meeting went very well and helped to explain to people that we're still very much in the preliminary stages of the planning process. We have no specific plan yet.
So. We're talking about a pilot too, which is like, when we're testing something, we can test stuff. All right, so we have a motion from Mrs. Mahan, and I forget who seconded it. And we've got 4 different items being referred variously to the manager and with other ultimate destinations, and 1 that we're just receiving.
Where's my second?
Who's the second? Second by Mr. Second. I believe I think someone already, anyway.
Oh, man, I
No,
couldn't remember. I didn't
or got
remember. Sorry.
hijacked. I don't know.
And I didn't write it down. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. New business, Mrs. Kapelka.
Nothing I talked to you about Saturday, Monday,
And so on Memorial Day at 9 a.m. in Town Hall, there will be a presentation and several speakers, including Mr. Chapdelaine and myself. But much more interesting is Colonel Strober, who's going to be speaking about his experience, which I look forward to. And then we will have the parade after that down to the graves
Screening of Taking Chance.
at 2 o'clock. At which theater? At the Region. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Kropelka. Doug?
Nothing, thank you.
Adam?
Two matters. One, just a little bit of brief follow-up on the Bus Rapid Transit Public Forum last Wednesday. I want to thank the Planning and Community Development Office and the team that put that together. I think Mr. Cura and Mr. Hurd would agree. It was very well attended. It was predominantly positive, or at least inquisitive, about what we were looking at. And I always like to make note when we have a community forum or a community event and I don't recognize more than half of the attendees, because that usually means we did something right in getting the word out, and we're talking about something that, is not just attracting the usual folks who get engaged with town government. So it was nice to see and hear from a bunch of different faces and people that were new, or at least new to me. So I thought that was a very good opening step on that project. The other matter I wanted to raise, as the board is aware, a joint statement was issued today from myself, the police chief, the school superintendent, as well as the co-chairs of the Human Rights Commission and the chair of the Rainbow Commission in regards to the vandalism and hateful graffiti at the high school several weeks ago. And I'm sure you all read it, and I'm sure many in the town have read it, but I just did want to mention, I was really just a listening participant in what was a really good dialogue last week with those parties that I just mentioned, representatives of the police department, schools, Health and Human Services, the Human Rights Commission, the Rainbow Commission, and ultimately the recommendation from the town's point of view is to offer to the 14 offenders an opportunity to pursue the restorative justice process as opposed to pursuing criminal prosecution. And the unanimous sort of feeling around the table was that pursuing restorative justice gave a better chance of creating a learning outcome and a restorative outcome for the community as opposed to just a punitive outcome. And it was really empowering and just really special to be around a table and part of a community that, especially from people from the groups in town that stood to be most hurt or harmed by what was done, to still think that trying to find this to be a learning opportunity, an opportunity to come out stronger than we were, was the right approach. Additionally, separate from the town's disposition or the police department's disposition, Principal Janger did also issue a note to parents today talking about school discipline that would be issued as well. So just wanted to state that was out there, and anybody who has not read that can read it on the town's website as well as in local press. So thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One is, since we won't meet again until June 11th, informing people about the Rotary Annual Banquet is on Tuesday, June 5th at the Sons of Italy. And this year, Sabatino D'Agostino is the Community Person of the Year. Just an outstanding individual. So if people are interested in that banquet, we'd love to have you. The other thing is, last time we gave out the Selectmen's Awards was 2013, which means it's time in 2018. We do them every 5 years. So what I'd like to recommend, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is put it on the agenda for June 11th to set out a calendar and our process in the past, whether people want to, I believe it's 5 awards, but I'll put that all together unless you want someone else to do it, sir. But we put, each of us name one person to an advisory committee. Applications are made to that committee. We also get to see all applications. They make recommendations to us, and we accept them, add to them, not accept them, whatever. So I just would ask each of you to start to think about whom would you want to appoint to such a committee, unless we decide on the 11th you want to change the process we've used in the past. Thank you, sir.
Do you want us to have a name on June 11th? Or you want us to set the process and then?
I think set the process on June 11th. Well, I'm just bringing it up tonight. I think it'd be unfair, you know.
Okay, sounds good.
And perhaps have all 5 awards in the
I'll
brief
have
description.
yeah.
So that when we're thinking of who that person we appoint.
Right,
Travis
I'll have
will
all of
name
that for
those.
the 11th. Won't I, Marie? Yes, thank you. Thank you, well said.
No new business.
John?
No, I just wanted to congratulate Boys and Girls Club for a great event at Town Hall a few weeks ago. It was very well attended. It was nice to kind of see the old slideshow of where when the Boys and Girls Club was built and the progression over the years. I want to thank the planning department for a great event. I got to learn, in addition to all the people that attended, I learned a lot about the bus pilot program by just going to that event. And, you know, I think a lot of people that had reservations about it could go there and be reassured that, you know, it's going to be a public process, and, you know, we'll all come together to come up with something that works for the district and for the bus riders. And I am excited to participate in the Memorial Day celebration. My son today was lamenting that he didn't get to go to the parade when it was a few weeks ago because of the weather, so I told him that he could walk in the parade with me on Monday, so we'll be there rain or shine.
Sweet. Joe?
What he said of the Boys and Girls Club and the planning forum, no other new business.
Okay. I did an interview on ACMi in the Arlington Dollar show talking about the town finances, in particular laying out some of the discussions about that we're all fairly familiar with about the override for operating override and for the high school debt exclusion that we've got coming next year. I feel like the conversation at town meeting was really helpful, and I feel like a lot of town meeting members left town meeting saying, you know, understanding and knowing what's coming down. And we've got, you know, I look at this as we've got like 12 to 14 months to make our case, and I'm out there trying to do that, and I encourage everybody else to do that as we go forward. Second thing is that informal meeting attire is in force for between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So, Adam, I'm looking forward to your best Hawaiian shirt next meeting.
I'm not.
You can wear white shoes.
I had asked about shorts, so if everyone comes in one meeting and I'm already in my seat, you'll know why.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.